Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another beautiful Monday with Lloyd, live with Lloyd, where the joy of numerology is the joy of learning and enlightenment. I have a very, very special guest. In fact, this is supposed to be what you're supposed to see when you got on. But this brother here, he and I have a history that goes way back, but we ain't going to go there yet. We're going to let him explain it. And in fact, he is the first guest and which from my book that I wrote about him and his examples is called uh, Numbers in Human Achievements on page 308 of my best-selling book, Numbers and You. And the reason why is that this brother reached out to me and he, that is Dr. Donald Thomas, that you see on the screen, actually did 3 Guinness World Records based on consulting me with the numbers. So I just thought it would be nice. And in fact, I was his guest in Hawaii, and it was just a pleasure to be there with him and his beautiful wife, Pam. And so, anyway, I'm going to let him weave and tell the story. But before I do that, let me do the forecast. The forecast is as you see. All righty, there we go. Um, First of all, it is Monday, the 21st. The sun is in Pisces. The moon is in the water sign of Scorpio. It's an 8 universal month, an 11 universal week, and an 11 universal day. The signs that are likely to be productive or favored in some way would be Leos, Aquarians, Cancer, Pisces, and Sagittarius. And this would include anyone born on the second to third, the 11th to 12th, the 20th, 21st, 29th, and 30th of the month. And tomorrow is a once in a lifetime event. If you don't catch tomorrow, you will never ever catch it in human history. I'm going to be making some appearances talking about this. One will be briefly on the Steve Harvey Morning Show, just briefly, and also on here in New York City on WPIX at about maybe 10:15 in the morning, where I'll be talking with host Dan and Hazel about 222. That's going to be live where I'll be talking about what is happening with this day and why it's so significant, especially those who are giving birth to children on tomorrow in and of itself. And then later on in the evening, I'll be doing another TV appearance about talking about 2/22/2022. So that's going to be it. And also what I'm going to have later is I want to talk about later on about there's going to be a hot and crazy summer. The reason why I say that is whoops, here we go. The reason why I say it is in August, by the time we reach August, which is the dog days of summer, there will be no less than 4 of these planets in retrograde during the summer. Pluto starts on April the 29th in fire signs of Aries. Saturn starts June the 4th in Leo. Neptune is the only one that's out of sync. It's in the water sign on the 28th, and Jupiter will go retrograde in the sign of Leo. But by the time we hit August, these 4 planets will be retrograde at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to some astrologers. I ain't going to name no names yet because I haven't cleared it with them, but they have been on this show to explain what's going to be happening. It's going to be a panel of astrologers, and it's going to be fun. And it's going to tell us what's going on. Not just it's hot because it's August, but it's hot because of all the other planetary factors that are kind of out of sync. All right. So that is that. And now, without that, I'm going to bring on my very special guest. Hold on, let me get rid of this. Okay, good. And I'd like to bring on my good buddy, Donald Thomas. There we go.
Oh, aloha.
There we go. Aloha. How you doing?
Can't complain, brother.
You know, it's interesting. Before we got on, you were sweating. You said it was 82 degrees over there. I said, yeah, rub it in. Okay.
It's 82 degrees. The only reason I'm buttoned up is because the shirt looks lopsided when I open it up. But yeah, it's 82 degrees.
I know how you doing, man.
Well, brother, about 2 years ago, I retired from Legal Aid Society. I was a Social Security disability advocate and paralegal for 10 years with Legal Aid. And 2019, I retired. And now I've been working on developing my online consultation service, an online bookstore, comic book store. That's where Spiderman comes from.
Yeah.
And just trying to live the healthiest life as I can.
Well, I tell you this, when I was in Hawaii to visit you and your beautiful wife and your four-legged children,
Two are in the room with me right now. They're being very well behaved.
One of them took my sandwich when I went to visit, but I ain't gonna take it personal. But it's okay. It's okay. What was that? T'Challa who took it?
King T'Challa took your
King T'Challa took my sandwich. I said, Joe, where my sandwich go? I just had it, but I came there. Anyway, human achievements. One of them, I guess, that most people are familiar with is the Guinness World Record. You set 3 of them. And first of all, what made you even pursue going to the Guinness record, not just one time, but making 3 attempts?
Well, what happened when I was first involved with the Tree of Life, I was also a student at City College of New York up on 137th and Convent. And that's when I got involved. I became a vegetarian when I was 19 years old, and I started doing research. And one night I was going to a club, and the club was closed. And as I walked down the street in Harlem, there was the Tree of Life. And I looked in the store and I saw all of the books that they had, and all of them basically called out to me. I said, man, this is exactly what I wanted. And over time, meeting with Kanya, the owner of the Tree of Life, being a student of Dr. Moore, an herbalist, I decided to go on, and Kanya gave me the permission to write the student handbook for the Tree of Life. And the reason for that is that I took my book, my thesis, my doctoral thesis in metaphysical philosophy.
Yes, because you are Dr. Donald Thomas.
Dr. Donald Thomas, listed in the Guinness book as such. I took the information from the Tree of Life as well as my information to do my doctoral thesis. There's at least about 40 or 50 books came straight from the Tree of Life that were in my book. And I wrote that book as a way of also introducing people to the books at the Tree of Life, as well as presenting my program. I had an aunt, she's still alive, that told me about a publisher. Well, unfortunately, the publisher turned out to be no good. And that's when I said to myself, okay, I've got to do something with my book. I've got to win some kind of award. That's just what I said to myself. And it just so happened that around that time, there was the Guinness game show. And I heard of the Guinness, but I never really was into it or what it was all about. And I went down to the Grand Army Plaza Library in Brooklyn, the main library, and I spoke to the librarian. And the librarian explained to me that the Guinness book was a reference book. You can't take it out of the library. And that it is matter of fact, the Guinness book is a world record. It is the most widely sold book on earth. The Bible is the most widely distributed, but the Guinness book is the most widely sold book on earth.
Interesting.
Anything in that Guinness Book of Records, you have to have enough proof that it can stand up in a court of law. You just can't say, I did such and such. You have to have radio, TV, and or newspaper coverage, as well as you must have a signed log from people over the age of 18 who have been a witness for at least an hour for any of the marathon events that they've had in the Guinness book. So when I saw
not just a cakewalk to come into the Guinness record.
Oh no. You have to prove it. You have to prove it to their satisfaction. Okay, and that's the bottom. It's their book. You got to prove it to their satisfaction.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense.
So the bottom line was that in the process of me finding out about the Guinness book, I sat down with you. I sat down with Dr. Moore. I sat down with Kanya. I said, I want to do a record. I think I could do a reading record. But when I looked in the Guinness book, there was no category for reading. And then as I spoke to Dr. Moore and Kanye, he said, well, you're presenting a philosophy. Look and see what that would come into. When it comes to the talking records in the Guinness book, there's a record for just straight talking. There's a category for sermon. There's a category for after dinner speaking. And so when I looked in that Guinness book, I said, okay, I have developed a philosophy of health and martial art. I intend for this philosophy to be practiced long after I'm dead and gone. What's the highest shelf of respect that I could put this book on? Philosophy of Divine Nutrition, world's longest after dinner speech. Philosophy of Divine Nutrition, world's longest sermon. Well, quite naturally, that sermon would put my philosophy on the highest shelf that I could put it on. Now, the difference was the after dinner speech was 12 and a half hours. The sermon record was 3 days. So, which both of them fall into the category that you and I started talking about when you gave me
Yeah.
my numbers.
Mm-hmm.
As a
In
process
fact,
of it,
this is the cover. This is the cover of the book for which
correct.
you set your record on, the
That is the actual
Philosophy of
book that I
Divine
use.
Nutrition.
Philosophy of Divine Nutrition. So what I use my books to break Guinness Book World Records in public speaking. So that book is a world record unto itself. Independent of me, if I go crazy, the book is still a world record, and nothing that I do negatively could ever take away from what was in there. If someone says, "What did you use to be able to talk that long?" It's in the book, literally. The information that I use is in that book on what I did. So, given the choice between after dinner speech and sermon, we decided that sermon would be the greatest demonstration. Now, I came to you, I said, okay, the record is 72 hours. Based upon your concepts of numerology, what would be the best numbers for me to go for? And that's when you explained to me about the Chaldean system of numerology looked upon the 9 as the spiritual number, the holy number. So if I was going for something from the sermon standpoint, if I could do something in the 90s, that would be good. And then you said to me 3 was my number. So that's where 93 came from.
Was you born on the 21st, and ironically, today is the 21st.
21st, yes. So that's where the 93 hours came from. And again, the record was 72. Technically, I could have done 73 and beat the record, but it was 93 as a direct result of conferring with you. And as I said to people, the numbers don't break the record. I was demonstrating a nutritional program, but all athletes look for an edge. And so if that numerology could be my edge, all well and good.
Yeah. And in fact, this is one of the rare shots of Dr. John E. Moore standing literally in front of the Tree of Life bookstore. And they used to call it, it's interesting because they referred to it as UCLA. Uh, on the corner
University on
of
the corner of
University,
Lennox Avenue.
University on the corner of Lenox Avenue. And this is the same corner where Malcolm X spoke, Brother Kenyatta spoke, Y.T. Walker spoke. All
That's
those
right.
giants in that day that was speaking in Harlem, this was the corner for which it was. And you know what's interesting, before you continue, there was a person that had wrote to Earth, Wind, and Fire when they was in California. They wanted to know something. And one of them, I think it was Maurice, that wrote back and said, you need to go to the Tree of Life. In other words, sent it right back from where he sent the information right there.
Right. And Maurice White was a vegetarian, and he was very insistent on Earth, Wind, and Fire, practicing good health habits. That's why most of them, if they're alive today, he really promoted that in the band, in the group.
Now, let me ask you this before we get further into the depths with this. You explained something very, very seriously, the way you were raised with your mom and how she fed you, and it was relating to a farm. Can you just touch on that a second so people can understand your history and commitment to your lifestyle of eating?
My parents, mother and father, were born in South Carolina. My mother in Lynchburg, South Carolina. Her father was Mr. A.K. Hilton, and he was one of the most successful farmers back in. He was a sharecropper. As one of my uncle would say, he was a 20th century slave, just the way my uncle said about him. But the bottom line, he was one of the most successful farmers. When no one else could grow anything, Mr. AK could grow something. And my mother, being from that sort of background, I can remember at 4 and 5 years of age eating salad with carrots and lettuce and raisins and so on. I had a cousin, she may be watching this now, and she always talked about whenever she came to visit Miss Rose, Aunt Rose, whenever they went home, they would have a good movement afterwards. And I said, that's because of all the fiber in the plants that she was feeding you. Okay, but she was a Southern cook, so the okra and the sweet potato and the string beans and all of that, that was common for me. I wasn't raised a vegetarian, but I was raised as someone who was that fruits and vegetables and fresh food was always emphasized. And so it wasn't too much of a problem. Now, I used to drink milk all the time, and I wound up having a knee disease, in which I wound up having a severe case of the knee disease, and I had to have bone chips removed from each knee. And once I saw that I was still having this knee disease, and I'm saying, well, I'm drinking milk all the time, that's when I even did more research into dairy and African Americans and other ethnic groups that are lactose intolerant and don't really break down the dairy protein. And that put me on the path of even more and more getting into more vegetarianism.
Okay, good, good. Now, Guinness record number one.
It's funny to talk about it as in 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
Yeah, right. Took
yeah.
me 10 years. It was my goal as an author, as someone who was promoting a concept of health and nutrition. My goal was to have 3 world records that demonstrated the effectiveness of my program. Took me 10 years to do it, which I'll be honest with you was a lot faster than I thought. But that's how long it took me to do it. And the whole point of those records, each record was based upon my books to present the actual information that I was promoting in terms of nutrition. Like I was talking to you before, in 1978, there was no such thing as Red Bull, 5-Hour Energy, Monster. There was no such thing as an energy drink industry. It's a multi-billion-dollar international industry today. And an interesting part of that 93-hour record, I did that record in September of 78. Dick Gregory did his run earlier part of that year in 78. And I had the opportunity of doing a television show with Dick Gregory in which he mentioned, had he not been a celebrity, he would have not received the sort of publicity that he received. The nutritional formula that he used to do that run became the basis for his Dick Gregory diet.
That's the Bahamian diet, I believe it
The
was.
Bahamian diet. That's how he was able to push. That's how he got that diet as a result of that demonstration. Now, I wasn't a celebrity, but to this day, 93 hours is 18 times greater than 5 hours. And so when you have a 5-hour energy, and I had somebody laugh, and I said, now, I can't put what I used on the market the way I used it, because I'd have to step on it several times because it's too strong. Since I did that first record, I know of at least 3 or 4 cases of young people who have died from sleep deprivation, trying to stay awake for 2 or 3 days to play video games. And they're drinking. They're drinking. Sleep deprivation in and of itself can cause problems. I took a college course at City College on sleeping dreams and daydreams. Right now, I found out in, Navy SEAL training, they can have up to 5 days of sleep deprivation because sleep deprivation is a military tactic. The longer the soldier is kept awake, the more likely they will make mistakes. They lack coordination, and they're just not going to be as focused. One of the things that I did after the 93-hour record, after every record that I've done, I've given a jump rope demonstration.
You certainly did. I bear witness.
And that's documented on CBS and NBC for the 93-hour one. And the point to that was I was demonstrating that even though if your listeners would go to their search engine and type in 72 hours of sleep deprivation, see what symptoms they say is supposed to happen to you that long doing without sleep. The fact that I could jump rope after 93 hours and give interviews, I was demonstrating that I was not punch drunk. I was not dead on my feet. I still had coordination. And so a soldier would need that for even nowadays, even if they're just pressing a button. If you've been sleep deprived, you don't press it as fast. And so, so many of the things that I was doing back in 1977, 78, they're multi-billion-dollar industries today. And as I always say to people, that just shows you my talk was not cheap.
No, it wasn't. And in fact, and this is the record to show it. This was your first Guinness record.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? I think that's. How did you feel when you got this? Knowing what you know, knowing what it takes. In fact, what's also interesting, you said, in fact, that when you first entered into the Guinness record, there was no fee. Now, fast forward to the 21st century, how much does it cost to sign up just to get into it?
It's a $600 entry fee to go for a Guinness record, $800 if you want them to expedite reviewing your case. And what that means is this. In September of 1978 is when I did my Guinness record. The 1979 Guinness book was almost in the process of being published. And so I was not listed in the 1979 Guinness book. I didn't get into the Guinness book until 1980. Had they had that expedited process, then it's very likely that I could have gotten into the 1979 as well as 80. I'm in the 1980, 1, 2, 3, and 4 editions of the Guinness book for that sermon record.
But it's interesting that they waited until 1980 because that adds up to a 9, which is one of your numbers.
It helps. It helps.
So this is the actual Guinness Record Award that he got. Also, there's another thing very significant about those signatures too. Would you like to explain that?
When you look at the names that you see down there, Donald McFarlane and Norris McMurtry, those are some of the original publishers of the Guinness Book of Records. They go back from the Guinness Book started in, I believe, 1955. And those are some of the original people. Actually, McWhirter, they were twin brothers. One was killed several years afterwards, the Guinness Book. But Donald McFarlane and McWhirter, those were some of the original people in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s as far as the Guinness Book of Records.
Interesting. Okay, let me do this. Let me get this out the way. That's interesting, Donald. Then what made you go for the second Guinness book?
Okay. Well, the philosophy of divine nutrition, all martial arts, philosophy of divine nutrition is the philosophical basis for my health and martial arts program. It's a health program first and foremost, such as Tai Chi, or what is referred to as Qi Kong, internal energy development. Philosophy of divine nutrition was the philosophical basis. If you study karate, there's a philosophy behind it, but you don't have to study the philosophy to benefit from it. If you study Tai Chi Chuan, there's a philosophy behind it, but you don't have to study the philosophy behind it. From a marketing standpoint, and really just from a standpoint of broadening my scope, whereas philosophy of divine nutrition represented the metaphysics, the books after that, I wanted to focus strictly more on nutrition, sports nutrition in particular. What can people in general and what can athletes use for more energy that's not a drug, that's accepted by the Olympic committees, the baseball, football, basketball commissions, et cetera, et cetera. Back in those days, you had a lot of different scandals of people who were winning records, but then they come up dirty and they take those records away. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I was always emphasizing is what is referred to as vegetarian athletic nutrition. And why I say vegetarian athletic nutrition, back in the days, the 1950s, 60s, and even the early 70s, the primary athlete that was into sports nutrition was bodybuilders. And the bodybuilders, of course, were into high protein and getting as big as possible. When the marathon became a big sport, scientists and others started to realize that high protein diet is not what's going to give you the ability to run 26 miles. You need more complex carbohydrates. And that's when sports nutrition opened up into more, not just for the bodybuilders, but for endurance athletes, be it a cyclist, be it a runner, anyone who needs more muscular endurance. You need a diet that's high in complex carbohydrates that breaks down into what they call muscle glycogen. That's the fuel that your muscles need. Your brain also uses glycogen. So your brain needs that sugar as well, not pure sugar, but muscle glycogen. You can have complex carbohydrates, which is more of your whole grains foods. Even things like tubers is a form of complex carbohydrates as compared to the simple carbohydrates, which is white sugar, white flour, and anything that has been bleached white. Mm-hmm. So the idea of me promoting a sports nutrition program, then I said, okay, I know about the sermon record, but I also know about that after dinner speech record. In the 70s and 80s, they started something called carbohydrate loading parties. And these would be carbohydrate loading, these would be lunches just before marathon events. And the idea is that 3 or 4 days before the marathon, if the marathon runners would stoke up on more pasta, breads, et cetera, they would be filling up their stores of muscle glycogen.
I heard about that, but I didn't understand the reasoning behind it. They say you want pasta, this, that, and the other.
That's right.
So this was marathon.
Exactly. So this was a way of taking in more carbohydrates that would build up their muscle glycogen. So since they already were having these carbohydrate loading dinners, I said, well, let me do an after dinner speech in which I will demonstrate what sort of herbs and foods that I'm saying an athlete can use for more energy and break a record. Okay.
And in fact, this is the book that you also published to demonstrate that. Tell us about this book.
All right. Well, I have two after dinner speech records. One was done in 1985, one was done in 1988. The one done in 1985 was based upon the draft version of this book. You know, as a writer, you're always getting your materials together and so on. And so in the process of me gathering all of my materials for this book, I used all of that material to do the after dinner speech in 1985. The title of that after dinner speech was The History of Herbs in Maintaining Physical Fitness. And it was based upon, as I say, the draft version of that book. 1988, I'd already published the book, and I used the book again. And this time, it's listed in the Guinness book. I gave an after-dinner speech titled Vegetarian Athletic Nutrition.
Now, is this the one that was at City College?
Both of the after-dinner speech records were done at City College, which you were at both of them.
Yeah, well, in fact, this is a picture of me introducing you.
There you go. That's 1985. That's June 21st, 1985 at the City College of New York.
Just before you actually started
Just before I actually started doing the record. And if you look right to my side over to my shoulder, you see a jar. That is a ginseng root. There was a company that I was working with called Famali. And Famali Wildcraft Herbs was one of the first American companies to bring the Chinese tonics into America. People always, if you remember the royal jelly and the little vials.
Yeah.
Famali was one of the first companies. Ben Zarakor was the owner. That was one of the first companies that brought those herbs into China. And Famali was the one who actually sponsored the dinner. They paid for the dinner, for the after dinner. And as I say, the title of that speech was The History of Herbs in Maintaining Physical Fitness.
And this is the record to show it.
Correct. So that one, and just to explain to people how the Guinness Book works, you in a marathon event, you are allowed a 5-minute rest after every completed hour. So you look on, and I want you to do some math for all of us in a minute, though. You'll see on that record, it says 19 hours, 25 minutes. Well, I did 18 straight hours. But at the end, the official Guinness record, your 5-minute rest periods are added to your total record. So whereas I did 18 with 17 5-minute rest breaks, it comes out to 19 hours, 25 minutes.
What was interesting, Dr. Moore was there, and everyone. Okay, there's a picture of him standing in front of the Tree of Life. And in fact, there was a person that was working the massage or whatever, who is now going on to his own fame, actor Wesley Snipes that was there.
Wesley Snipes was a part of my team when I did that first after dinner speech record. Another good brother by the name of Ben White. If he's anywhere out there in the world, please contact me. That's the one that introduced me to Wesley. At the time, I knew Wesley as Brother Kabir. I knew him. At the time that he was with me, he had just done the Bad video with Michael Jackson. This
yes, before, in the subway, yep.
Yeah, this was before Blade. This was before he really made his name with the Blade movies. But yes, there are a lot of people. There was a brother, there's a gentleman in Hawaii that went on to win an ultra marathon event. He was one of the people that was at the first time I tried to do an after dinner speech was in Hawaii. And I did it to bring attention to Native Hawaiian health, as well as I did it shortly before the carbohydrate loading party for the Ironman triathlon. This was in 1982. The Ironman was just starting as a sport back in those days. And one of the things that I did, I also had all of the participants sign a petition to include the Ironman into the Guinness Book of World Records. The Guinness Book, for various reasons, the Guinness Book is very particular. I had the food and beverage person at my event. I had food there available for people. I had demonstration of what I was going to eat for dinner. When I submitted it, the Guinness Book came back and said, we don't recognize that as a true after dinner speech. And really? You have to have tickets and you have to advertise it and et cetera, et cetera. The record I had to beat was 12 and a half. I did 15 hours. I did beat the record. But Guinness was very strict on what they considered an after dinner speech. And so that particular after dinner speech is not listed in the Guinness Book. But it did allow me to make a very good relationship with the Native Hawaiian people, because I did that record in part to bring attention to Native Hawaiian health. Native Hawaiian health is very similar to African American health in that we are part of what's referred to as minority health disparities, higher rates of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, etc., among Native Hawaiians, Native Alaskans, African Americans. And this, of course, is in part due to diet and lifestyle. So even though I didn't break that record, it was advertised throughout Hawaii that I was doing it in the name of bringing attention to Native Hawaiian health. And that certainly opened the door for me in Hawaii in ways that I can't even begin to tell you.
Which is probably why you've been living there all these decades.
You better believe it. There was something that I'll read to you about, I want to say 50 years before America banned slavery, the Kingdom of Hawaii and the Constitution banned slavery. Any slave that could get to Hawaii could not be sent back to America and could not be extradited.
Interesting.
Yes, and that was a law. The kingdom, the king of Hawaii, that was in the Hawaiian Constitution before they were taken over by America. Any African that made it to Hawaii could not be sent back to America into slavery. So when they asked me, Donald, you coming back to America? You coming back? Now, I am in the United States. This is the 50th state of the United States. I'm not in a foreign country, but I'm not in the continental United States. And to be very honest with you, I'm in the only state in America where white is not in the majority.
That's exactly right. I was there. I was about a week and a half.
Yeah. And I've had white people unsolicited look at me and say, things must be good for you out here.
Really?
Okay? Oh, yeah. You know, unsolicited. They just because, hey, brother, I was an attendant on the ward at Kingsborough Psychiatric Center in Brooklyn. Here in Hawaii, I went all the way up to being one of the heads of the entire adult mental health division of the state of Hawaii, executive director of a mental health agency, community liaison director for a mental health agency, president of the board of directors of the Hawaii Protection and Advocacy Agency, a celebrity chairperson for the American Heart Association Jump Rope for Heart campaign. And through that American Heart Association, I have been formally recognized as a master teacher and a master performer in rope jumping. And they sent me to over 60% of all of the schools in the state of Hawaii to promote heart-healthy nutrition and jump rope skills.
That's why you Dr. Donald Thomas, okay?
And the point is that, but you know, I see many of your listeners and they say that they want to start a business. A mantra in business is location, location, location. If you're catching hell in New York and New Jersey, New Mexico can't be any worse. Okay? And if you're trying to do a business, if you're trying to branch out, don't ever think that you are only limited to one location. It may not happen. Very few people in Hollywood were born in Hollywood. They came to Hollywood to make their name. And so for people who are trying to do something with their life, don't think that you have to be limited to any other than the 50 states and 4 territories. I had no intentions of leaving America, but I knew I had to leave New York.
New York is a tough town, but even more so now, it appears.
But if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And that's the point.
That has always been the reputation. But there was something I left out because in the first record at the Tree of Life, they did something very interesting. You want to explain this one? Hold on. Let me get it. You want to explain this? This
was brother
was made.
I apologize to the brother. I don't know what state he's in right now. His name is Joseph Pollack. And at that time, he was studying acupuncture, acupressure. He is a doctor of acupressure today. And I give him full acknowledgement for that. Brother Joseph is the one, he made this big poster. And every hour, he would cross off one. And if you go down there, you see down at the lower end there, you see it says old world record. That was 72. And then he went on and added more to it and added more to it.
And the only one was left then was that 93rd hour. That had not yet been completed, but it showed that what he did was he made this poster that he distributed to the people around, and he checked off every hour you completed.
Every hour. Actually, it was one big poster. And after he made that one big poster, I made copies of it and distributed. But yeah, he made the big poster.
I think that's amazing. That's a nice testimony. In fact, this is another one that was recorded out of the New York Daily News from one of their records.
And you know the old expression, see you in the funny papers.
Now,
I
how
was
did this come about? Tell us
I
about
was
this.
a
It was
I
interesting
was a
story about this.
I was a guest lecturer at Medgar Evers College in New York. And one of the senior citizens, it was a gerontology colloquia, and we'll discuss gerontology in a minute. One of the senior citizens looked up, as soon as she walked up to me, she says, I collect Guinness cartoons. You're supposed to be in there. And she said it to me just like that. And I looked at her, I said, yes, ma'am. And I called up the Daily News, and the Daily News say, we don't publish it, we just distribute it. King Features in Kansas City, they're the ones who actually create the Guinness cartoons. So they gave me the phone number. I called up to get King Features. I told him who I was. He said, what's your record? He said, okay, let me go look at it. He said, oh, okay. Because the Dalai Lama of Tibet had a cartoon in the Guinness book. The Dalai Lama of Tibet did a 60-hour sermon, 5 to 7 hours a day for 5 to 7 days to equal 60 hours. But they had a picture of him for the sermon. So that was even another reason that I said, okay, well, if they already got somebody for a sermon at 60 and it wasn't even straight 60, I know I'm qualified. So the gentleman said, yeah, I don't see any reason why we can't put you in there. The next thing I said to him was, can I send you a picture? And the reason that I wanted to send the picture, this is Black History Month, and we have so many realities of Black accomplishments that have been lost, stolen, and strayed.
Or ignored.
Okay. When I send him that picture is an actual cartoon version of a photograph taken of me while doing the sermon outside in front of the Tree of Life.
That's amazing. And you did it. I was there. I was there for all three.
You've been to all three. And one of the points to make to people, the title of every record that I've done, I've made sure that those titles are listed. So I didn't read from phone books, restaurant menus, or Dr. Seuss. Okay, my books are the records.
Yeah.
And they see, that's the thing. I am an independent author and publisher. I made my books world records unto themselves. That's how I got the publicity to promote my books. Didn't have any money. I tell people I didn't have a shoestring budget. I had a broken shoestring budget. Okay.
But you had a lot of creativity with you.
Exactly. I didn't have the money. I had the talent and the intelligence. Didn't have the money, didn't have the contact or connection. But as a part of what metaphysics teaches you is self-actualization, to learn as much about yourself and your talents and your abilities as possible. And as they say, you can have every book on success. It doesn't matter unless you put those concepts into practice. So the idea that I'm saying I have a book that will give you more energy, it's one thing to say it in a book. It's another thing for me to stand up and say it long enough to break world record.
Demonstrate it. Yeah, and demonstrate it.
To demonstrate it.
And in fact, for those who, it's interesting. I don't know whether people have been witnesses, but remember when I visited you in Hawaii, I brought you the list of everybody they had to sign their signatures.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And
all of that is
amazing.
You have to document. All of that is part of the documentation. Even the silly, you think of Guinness records and you see a lot of silly records. Even those silly records have to have enough proof that they could walk into a court of law and prove they actually did it. You just can't say I did it and you get into the Guinness book. It doesn't work like that.
Now, this is a picture of you when you were finally acknowledged, and this was in later publications. Am I correct?
Correct. That picture is in the 1989 Guinness Book of Records, and to show you how it works, that picture was taken of me at the that picture was taken me at City College in 1988. And Peter Grossever was the photographer. And I was able to get that picture into the Guinness book. I can tell you a quick story about that one if you have the time.
Please do. Please do.
As you know, I'm in the Guinness book for the sermon and for the after dinner speech. When I first saw the after dinner speech, there was a gentleman by the name of Giles Brandreth. He was an author, and he had a picture in the Guinness book for a 12.5-hour after dinner speech. 1988, I came back to New York because I had done the 19-hour after dinner speech. Someone beat it with a 24-hour after dinner speech. There's my numbers again. Mm-hmm. And I came back to take back the after dinner speech. I had a meeting with the head of the Sterling publishers who were located in Manhattan. They were the ones who published the American Guinness book. And I said to the lady, her name was Sid Smith, like Sid Charisse.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to her, I said, if I break this, if I get my record back, do you think I could get a picture like Giles Brandreth had a picture for the after dinner speech? And she said to me, she said, well, if you break the record, I'll see what I can do. So, of course, I broke the record and I came back. No sooner did I walk in the door, the lady jumped up and she said, Donald, I want you to know I advocated for you. David didn't see it. David Bohm was the actual publisher. David didn't see it, but I advocated for you. You'll get your picture. Now, here's my point, Lloyd. This man had a record of 11 hours and 12 and a half hours, and there's his picture. I walked in the door with a 93-hour sermon, a 19-hour after-dinner speech, and walked back in the door with a 32-hour after-dinner speech. But if I didn't have that woman advocate for me, I would not have gotten the picture. And that, you see, and that's one of the things I went on to become an advocate. And one of the things I always realized, your cause could be just, your cause could be true. Without proper advocacy and representation, you still may not get what's due you. And so that is the reality of it. And that's one of the reasons why I became a Social Security disability advocate. So many people who were sick and ill and couldn't work anymore, and their case was good, but if they didn't have everything that's needed, they still didn't win that case. And so again, my math is lousy, but I know 11-hour speech and a 12-and-a-half-hour speech together only comes out to what? 23 and a half hours. I walked in the door with 19 hours, 93 hours, and 30 hours.
Yeah,
But if she didn't advocate for me, and this is the point that I'm making, if you don't have the proper advocacy, you still may not get what's due you.
That's interesting. And by the way, this is the third Guinness record that you got.
And if you go to the Guinness book, under my picture that you showed, it will say I spoke for 30 hours, the subject, vegetarian athletic nutrition. And as I was explaining to you, you get a 5-minute rest break. So 29 5-hour rest breaks. That's why my official time is 32 hours, 25 minutes.
Interesting. Let me ask you this. This is something to be very, very proud of, man, to have something like this where you got to really, now this is what you call putting in the work. Because, I mean, Guinness record now is such a household name. They've even got the Guinness, I think on 42nd Street, the Guinness Museum of Record Breakers and all that stuff. They got what they call it, those plastic figures of Guinness record holders and whatnot. What would you say to anybody now that wanted to do this, based upon so many things have changed, especially now you need $600. Just that in and of itself is a deterrent to some people.
That's right.
And if you want to verify it, in other words, if you spend $200 more, what does that do again?
It speeds up them reviewing your submission to what you did.
What does that mean?
Well, for example, people all over the world could submit their proof to say that they did a Guinness record. There's only but so many staff at the Guinness staff, so it's like I'll put your letter up at the top of the stack, or I'll leave it at the bottom of the stack. You pay me the extra $200, I'll put it up at the top of the stack, and I'll review it faster. That's what it comes down to. Okay. See, I know that there's a comedian, John Oliver. Is it John Oliver? Yeah, he did an expose one time, because what happens is that you have some dictators who like to break Guinness Book World Records because the Guinness Book is an internationally respected form of credential. And he was kind of teasing them about that. But the bottom line is that you still have to have the right stuff in order to break the record. Even if you're a dictator, you still have to break the record. But if you have money, let me answer your question. If I met someone right now, and I have worked with people, I work with a young brother he's my age now, a brother by the name of Audie Champion. And Audie was going for the jumping jack record. Mm-hmm. He was trying to get sponsorship. If you were going to break a Guinness Book World Record, I would say to you, first and foremost, see if you could get sponsorship so that you would be able to put more time and energy into just the training that you would need to do the record. Then I would also say to you, if you're going to spend the time, energy, and money to break a Guinness record, break one that can do something for you after the record. Break a record that can help you professionally in some kind of way. This is why different corporations break Guinness records. Geno's Pizza, we have the world's biggest pizza, or Ever Ready Batteries, world's longest lasting battery, listed in the Guinness book. The whole point is that it serves as a form of international advertising for how good your particular product is.
You know, I hadn't even thought of it like that, but that's true.
That's what they do. Now, you introduced me to someone, and to show you, my goal was 3 world records. I had 7 attempts before I hit that 3 world record. One of those attempts, the cover of that white cover book, I had met through you a Japanese woman from a newspaper called Yomiuri Shimbun. Yomiuri Shimbun is in the Guinness book, is the most widely distributed daily newspaper in the world. The Japanese had bought Pilot Pen. And people remember years back when Big Pen first came out, they had the girl.
Big Pen used to be big deal.
Right. And they had the girl put the pen on the ice skates and skate around and then stick the pen in the fire. Big Pen writes first time every time. There was a Chinese artist, Dong Kingman. He took 10 of his paintings and he had them reproduced 1,200 times each for 120,000 paintings. And at Benihana's restaurant in Japan, he autographed all of those paintings to make it the most autographs. I saw that and I said, I know what you did, my man. I was going to take my book cover. I had General Nutrition Center on Herald Square was going to let me stay in the store overnight if need be. That was one of their largest stores. I was going to reproduce the book cover 123,000 times and under 12 days, sign all of them. That would have made that book cover, each book cover was be a Guinness Book World Record unto itself. And of course, that's marketing. Got ready to do the record. The publisher that I was on came back with a book that said The Way of PDN, the Ultimate Athletic Nutrition Program. Had nutrition spelled wrong on the front cover of the book and didn't print the thing out. So I wound up having to sue him. But that was $1 million idea. The book was going for $9.93. At 123,000 copies of that book, that was $1 million idea, you know. So
and 123 is your 6. Everything you did was involved. And let me tell you, for those of you, this is the book on page 308 and 309, where I go into more specifics about these Guinness records that he performed. And this the chapter is called Numerology and Human Achievements. And that's why I was saying, of all the people I've mentioned in my books, it is nice that we've had this beautiful, long relationship. And it's just been very dramatic about some of the things that we've done. So what else happened as a result after that 3rd Guinness record? Is that what got you to Hawaii? Or did you?
Well, I tell you, did the record in 1978. Did the first record in 1978. I got publicity. There was a major newspaper strike, and there was only one newspaper at the time that actually covered me, but I was covered on every television station in New York City during that week. I used the publicity, and when I was at Medgar Evers College, there was a professor that told me that there was gerontology programs in various states. I wrote to Hawaii, and because I had documentation that I had broken that record in the name of promoting vegetarianism, a vegetarian bed and breakfast made me an offer of 50% reduction in lodging. And that's how I got to Hawaii. So I got half off as a result of being in the Guinness Book of Records.
And stayed there the rest of the time, the rest of the half, right?
Right. Hang out the rest of the time. But yeah, and one of the things I was talking to you about, you don't get money for breaking Guinness records. If you don't have sponsorship, then you definitely should go for a record that can do something for you professionally going forward. It has always been my goal to be able to say to my audience that I got as much out of the status of being in the Guinness Book of Records as anyone who has ever been in there who didn't have backing, who didn't have sponsorship, who didn't have endorsement. When you look at a race car driver, you can't see his jacket for all of the patches on them. Those are sponsors. He doesn't have to get up and hit a 9 to 5 because people are sponsoring him to just ride around that track all day long. He has sponsors. When you see somebody go for a Guinness record, even for something like knocking down the most dominoes, They have to get someone who's willing to clear out their entire warehouse for them to do that. And then they've got people who volunteer to help them set all of those things up and things of that nature. So it's a lot more involved than people just see. What you see on TV is the end result of, in some cases, people have spent their whole life trying to break one Guinness record. That's why I'm very humble with what I'm doing. People have to listen to me right now and remember, you're listening to a man who has talked for 93 hours, 30 hours, and 19 hours straight. I'm not using a voice box up to my throat for you to hear me. My voice is still strong after all of these years. And so not only was I demonstrating herbs and things for energy, if you are a professional singer, if you are a professional speaker, I was demonstrating herbs and things that you could use to keep your voice together. How many entertainers have had to drop out of concerts because of sore throat and exhaustion? I've demonstrated I have something for energy and for sore throat.
Well, you did it well. You did it well. And let me see there, because there's some other things too. This is your, we were at the Tree of Life, but this is your Tree of Life of Health. Can you explain this?
Yes, I can. When my program is called my nutritional program is called PDN Vegetarianism. PDN stands for Philosophy of Divine Nutrition. And PDN Vegetarianism is an outgrowth. One of the things when people noticed that yellow tracksuit was one that was worn by the late Bruce Lee in a movie called Game of Death. And I promoted the Game of Life. And the bottom line, though, is that I am a student of martial arts. And in 1973, when Bruce Lee passed away, his wife compiled all of his theories and concepts of martial arts philosophy and published it in 1975, titled The Tao of Jeet Kune Do. In that Tao of Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee had a basic concept of nutrition. It says nutrition, build up, break down, and muscular diet. He also had mental cultivation, J. Krishnamurti, Zen, and Taoism, as far as the mental concepts. Well, what is now referred to as mixed martial arts is attributed a great deal to the concepts that Bruce Lee was promoting. And mixed martial arts simply means you're not bound by any one form of martial arts, but whatever form is effective at that time, you use that.
Yeah.
PDN vegetarianism is based upon the idea that all forms of plant-based nutrition have value. And so I'm neither vegan nor vegetarian, nor raw food, nor fruitarian. I'm everything within the plant-based world based upon what's the healthiest and what are my needs at that given time. You have people out here in Hawaii who have tried to be fruitarian. Well, if you live in Hawaii, you might be able to make it off of just fruits and so on. What temperature is it over there right now, Lloyd? It's about what's the temperature? You're not going to make. Yeah, you're not going to make it on the East Coast just living off of pineapples.
No, you're not. No, you're not. No,
it ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen, okay? One of the points, so PDN vegetarianism is the total, if you can put it back up there for a second, please.
Okay.
Tree. PDN vegetarianism is the total nutritional program. In the tree, you see apiarian, vegan, raw foodism, lacto-ovo. Apiarian is bee nutrition, and it was Dr. John Moore that introduced me to bee pollen, propolis, royal jelly, and honeys. In particular,
and this is Dr. Moore for those.
And that is Dr. Moore.
The man was brilliant.
Brilliant herbalist. Dr. Moore take you to any park and show you every herb in there, what you could use the bark of the tree for, what you could use the roots for, what you could use the leaves for. The man had a 4th grade formal education, but he was a genius when it came to herbs. He knew
he had the herbal knowledge of a scholar.
And he was a tremendous inspiration to me, because I would go up to City College every day, and I'm sitting in the room with professors, and then I would come down to the Tree of Life, and I knew that man there knew as much on his subject as any PhD up that hill on 137th.
He would take groups through Harlem and these little leaves and bushes and all that stuff. He would describe how you could use it, how you could survive on it. I mean,
everything.
I mean, just a wonderful kind human being.
He knew his stuff. Just like when I met you, after a while, I said, this man knows his stuff. And that is an inspiration to any young person. I don't care what it is, you study it. And you keep studying it. and that's what will bring you to a level of proficiency and professionalism.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
apiarian nutrition, bee nutrition. Some people are allergic to bee products, and so it is not required that you consume bee nutrition as a part of PDM
Now hold up.
vegetarian.
Now, what do you mean by bee nutrition? From the bumblebee? Is that what you're talking about?
From the bumblebee, so from the honeybee, you can get bee pollen, which is pollen, flower pollen collected by the bees is bee pollen. Flower pollen collected directly from the plants, which is what I now strongly recommend to people. That's called flower pollen in and of itself, and we'll discuss that as well.
And listen, and isn't it known that they said beekeepers are known to have a very long life? Is it from? Can you explain that?
In part, if they practice what they preach, yes, in part, that is true. That is true. You know, like anything, if you practice what, you know, you could be a hairdresser with lousy hair. You got to practice what you preach. You could be an overweight gym teacher. So, you know, so you have something.
So you want to get back to the tree?
Yeah, back to the tree, please.
Okay, yeah.
So you have apiarian nutrition. Again, propolis is a form of beeswax, but that is also used to be referred to as Russian penicillin.
Really?
Yes, propolis is something that can help stimulate the immune system. Whether you take it internally or not, honey as well as propolis is something that you could certainly use on all burns and wounds for greater healing. Mm-hmm. And of course, we know about honeys. When it comes to honey, the darker the honey, the higher the mineral content. And there were certain special honeys that Dr. Moore did have me on during those 5-minute rest breaks.
Listen, now, he gave me some honey that was so potent. I mean, it had a
like liquor.
He just gave me a
little. It was almost like you get drunk on them.
I said, "What?" Go ahead.
That's right. And then, of course, royal jelly. Royal jelly is the exclusive food of the queen bee. Queen bee grows 3 times larger than any other bee. And royal jelly is used very much in cosmetics and used very much so in the Asian countries. And again, I said honeys. Raw foodism, the whole concept of raw food is that they don't recommend you eating food that's been cooked over about 118 degrees. So it doesn't have to be completely raw, but it needs to be primarily raw. There are some foods that you get the nutritional benefit from more so if you cook it than if you eat it raw. And that's a part of what you would learn with me. And then Lacto-Ovo Vegetarianism, really one of the first kinds of vegetarianism, people relied upon dairy and eggs for their protein. However, from a athletic standpoint, you really want to be careful about eggs and dairy because of the fat content. It takes away from endurance. And I discussed that. There was a doctor that wrote an article and shows you, I was laying up in the bed with knee surgery and I was reading a Runner's World magazine. That's when I first got introduced to jump rope. And they wrote an article about the fact that a high fat diet takes away from your athletic endurance. And so it was recommended that you be on a diet no more than about 10% fat because that would aid in overall oxygen uptake. Mm-hmm, Go back to the tree for a second, please.
Yeah, okay.
And then if you look down at the bottom, what you're going to see straight down at the tree is herbology and palynology. Herbology is the study and practice of herbs. Palynology is the study of pollen. The flower pollen is something that I recommend when you advocate plant-based nutrition. Flower pollen is the very foundation of all plants.
Hold up. You mean there is a specialized study in just the pollen in and of itself?
Oh, yeah.
What you saying?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Not only from a standpoint of nutrition, and you have many clinical studies, Graminex, Graminex. That is the name of the company that I have been working with ever since the days that the Dick Gregory diet ended. And they can, on their page, they will give you several clinical studies on the use of flower pollen. And then pollen in general, because of course people have pollen allergies. And so there's scientific studies on that as well. To the left, intestinal biocultures, that's your acidophilus. Whether you buy straight
acidophilus.
Yeah, the acidophilus, which will help with digestion.
Who's he?
I'm sorry?
I was only joking. Who is it sounds like a guy's name. Who is
Oh, yeah.
Listen, you're a doctor, so for the layperson, can you explain?
Oh, yeah. So
thank you.
The acidophilus is something that when you see people recommend yogurt, and things of that nature, that's what they're recommending it for because of the intestinal biocultures that's in that yogurt. Unfortunately, a lot of the yogurts have a lot of sugar and other things in them, but you can get yogurts that don't have any sugars. Again, these are for people that if you're into dairy, then that would be one of the ways you can get intestinal biocultures straight from the capsules themselves. And if you're having problems with digestion, bloating, gas, things of that nature, I sound like a commercial. That may be one thing that can help you. Fruitarian, nutarian. Again, it's fruits and nuts, but you would have to really consume a lot for anybody to say that you are just a strict fruitarian, nutarian.
What would be the best nuts and what would be the best fruits then, Dr. Thomas?
All of your berries, your blueberries, strawberries, all of your berries are some of the best fruits that you could consume. With your nuts, your walnuts would be one of the best nuts that you can consume.
Really? What about almonds?
Almonds are good. I mean, all of them have their place. You see, that's why I'm saying in the world of vegetarianism, you have a wide variety of fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and all of them have value. When you say what's the best, it would be based upon, well, what has the highest antioxidant value, or what may have a little bit higher omega-3 value. And so this is where the walnuts come in at, is having a high omega-3 value. But walnuts are very good. The almonds are very good. Pistachios are good. Of course, unsalted. And basically, you want to have them raw, not dry roasted, because that dry roasting process can convert some of the fat into a form that is bad for your body over time. You eat a little bit of it, it's not going to kill you, but most people don't eat a little of anything, and they eat a lot of it, and they've been eating it.
Nowadays,
exactly. Yeah. So that is, that's the basic program. That's the basic nutrition. And as I say, I have a consultation service that I'll be officially starting next month. But people can go and they can sign up even now. And the point is that you have people right now that are charging up to $5,000 to teach you how to be a vegetarian.
Hold up. Are you serious?
I am as serious as a heart attack, brother, because I stay on everybody's email list because I want the knowledge.
Yeah, you want to know what's going on in your field.
Yeah, I want to know what you're talking about.
They charge as much as
$5,000 to teach people how to be a vegetarian. Okay, and I'm not charging anywhere close to that, good people. And the bottom line is, hey, I'll make you laugh with this one. I'm very proud to say I preached the world's longest sermon and never passed the plate, never raised an offering, never asked for a donation. I took neither silver nor gold for my journey.
Oh, and by the way, your after dinner speech, the ticket was only $3.
Only $3. Okay, I started in Brownsville. You're interviewing me in my home in Hawaii today. So I didn't have to, it wasn't money that got me here. I have always been committed to helping people. And, of the many people who inspired me, Jack LaLanne was one of them. And, Jack LaLanne is the one that pulled the rowboats on his 70th birthday. Now, I have no intention of doing anything like that. But Jack LaLanne had made the statement all his life he wanted to help people, but he always felt he had the right to be compensated for what he did. I have done many things as a volunteer. I was a volunteer for that Jump Rope for Heart for 15 years. But in the process of me volunteering, it gave me a credential through the American Heart Association as a master teacher. So while I may not have gotten paid, and I even took vacation days at times to do those volunteer work. But if you are putting into something, you're going to get something out of it. And so
that makes sense.
I did a lot of volunteer work, but the volunteer work that I did was so that it would promote what I was doing. I developed a jump rope exercise program. The American Heart Association, one of their largest fundraising events is the Jump Rope for Heart campaign. And so by me hooking my wagon up to something like that, that gave me a tremendous amount of respect and credibility. So this is why I said, because I had somebody, why are you volunteering for that? Well, you don't necessarily have to volunteer for everything, but if you're trying to get ahead, if you like animals, volunteer at an animal shelter, or volunteer someplace. If you want to be a nurse, volunteer someplace where they'll let you do nursing and so on, so that you make yourself known. I will always be a kid from a dead-end street in Brownsville. I come from Amboy Street between Riverdale and Livonia. Mike Tyson comes from Amboy Street between Sutter and Blake.
Right around
Our
the corner.
our streets are dead end streets of amboy streets. And it's interesting. Mike Tyson is in the Guinness Book of Records, and so am I.
And
Now
Mike
that
Tyson is a 3, and so are you.
so that just shows you, as much as people will say Brownsville is a tough place, Brownsville produced 5 heavyweight boxing champions. Of the 3 grandmasters in chess, 1 comes from Brownsville, and a 3-time Guinness Book World Record holder comes from Brownsville. So as tough as Brownsville may be, you can do anything that you want to do if you set your sights to it. It may take a while. Like I said, I surprised myself that I did 3 in 10 years, but it can be done. But you have to have the health.
Yeah.
You know, again, people want to start a business. You work more hours in your own business than you do a 9 to 5. You can't sit there eating a lot of junk and not taking care of yourself and think you're going to be successful in that business. As a Social Security disability advocate, I tell people all the time, don't work hard all your life to wind up giving the money to the doctor and the pharmacist.
Yeah, that makes no sense. That makes no sense.
You don't work yourself into an early grave. Now that you've come to the point where you could retire and enjoy your life, you're sick. The doctor, the pharmacist, church, and about one other place. That's about all. That's your whole life. At some point, that's all the places you can go because you're sick now. And so when you're a younger person, take care of yourself so that when it's time to retire, you can enjoy your life.
You know, it's interesting because when I told people that I eat primarily organic food, right? And they says, well, isn't it expensive? And I says, did you ever see a hospital bill? Okay. I mean, so it all depends on where your priorities are.
My background is in preventative health and nutrition. The American health system is what they call palliative. So basically, do whatever you want to do. Palliative, do whatever you want to do. You get sick, you go to the doctor. Preventative means do what you can do so that you don't have to go to the doctor in the first place. So say, for example, heart disease is the #1 killer in America. The American Heart Association has gobs of literature that tells you the sort of diet and lifestyle and exercises that you could engage in that would greatly reduce your chances of having a heart attack in the first place. Now, you can either heed that information and reduce your chances of having a heart attack, or eat anything you want and then have them crack your chest open, and, you know, put a balloon in your arteries and so on. So, you know, what's harder, putting that cake down or having them cut your chest open? But we live in a society where, for a lot of people, they'd rather go on and eat the cake. Okay?
Yeah, but look at the consequences they pay, though.
This is the point. And unfortunately, many people are not health oriented until their health is affected. And
do you think that is the way? Because, like in some nations, they take a preventive health approach
from the get-go, from the start.
It doesn't seem to be that way here.
No. Unfortunately, excuse me. If everybody knew how to reduce heart disease, the cardiologists would be out of business. Okay. I was in the Rotary Club, and I was talking with a dentist, and the dentist said, you know, the Dental Association did such a good job of educating people about brushing and flossing, revenue went down. That's when they started coming up with adult braces and all of these other things to make up for the revenue, because cavities had greatly reduced in numbers among people because they did such a good job of pushing brush your teeth after each meal and so on and so on.
That's true. That's
preventative. Brushing your teeth after each meal is preventative. You know, eating organic foods is preventative. Exercising every day, taking a walk every day. Those are preventative things.
And they're simple.
It's simple. It's simple. But it's a lot easier to pick up a good habit than it is to get rid of a bad habit.
What you gonna do?
What can you do? It's a lot. Listen, how many years they're telling people cigarettes will kill you?
True.
People still smoking.
True. Yeah.
Okay? People still smoking.
Cigarettes almost $14, $15 a pack too.
Right.
That's a whole lot of money to smoke.
That's a whole lot of money. People still smoking.
Including
I have been, So, you know, I have been committed to preventative health and nutrition all my life. I have been committed to what is referred to now as minority health disparities. I have to find the leaflet. One of those leaflets that I did for my sermon, it said, cancer will kill 121 Black people today. Diabetes. Black women have some of the highest rates of diabetes and so on. That was in 1978. It was not until 19... Yeah, black women
at that time, those kind of numbers?
Yes. Back in those days. Yes. See, that's the point. One of the main things that motivated me to do those records was that I saw how much the white society was being bombarded with nutrition information and health information. I would go to a black magazine or anything like that, next to nothing. Even to this day, the only time you basically see something on a black website that's about health is when a famous black person died from that particular thing. Then they may highlight that particular thing. But the fact that African Americans have one of the highest rates of heart disease and diabetes in America, heart disease and diabetes should be information that you should see every time you pick up any black literature. Okay? One of the things that I'm trying to get even the people that are listening to this now, your pastor, your barber, your beautician, all you have to do is write to the Heart Association, write to the Cancer Society, write to the Diabetes Association and say, send me your literature. That's the sort of literature that every place a black person goes, they should see that literature to at least begin to be educated about why this thing is so important. You don't wait until they cracking your chest open to say, I'm going to go natural now.
Because it's too late.
It's never too late, but yeah.
No, not when your heart is being opened up to put a stent or
yeah, then it's too late. It's too late.
Yeah, sorry.
Look at even somebody like Bill Clinton. Clinton used to jog, but he also used to love to stop at McDonald's and eat his hamburgers. Clinton had the heart surgery. Clinton went on a near vegan diet. There's a doctor by the name of Dr. Dean Ornish. And Dr. Ornish was able, as a matter of fact, there's some insurance companies now that cover it, and the people listening can find out if it's covered through your insurance. Dr. Ornish was able to take people who were scheduled for heart surgery and through diet, exercise, meditation, able to reverse heart disease so that they did not need the surgery. And this is all clinical documentation. So this is not just he made a statement, I cured people. No, this was on the clinical documentation that he is able to reverse heart disease through a near vegan diet, exercise, stress management, etc. So there's definite proof of what diet can do when it comes to these diseases. But again, it's so much easier to just keep on doing what you're doing than to make change, even if the change is a good change.
And come in and see your doctor and get the newest medicines they got going for you.
Right. Exactly. That's the point. You know, the average senior citizen has no less than 5 different prescriptions on their table right now. If you went into the average American senior citizen, there's at least 5 different prescriptions up on their table someplace. And at least 2 of them is for side effects from the other 3. So yeah. So again, taking care of yourself. And I want to talk to people now, people that come from the South, people that come from the Caribbean. So much of what is being promoted now in the name of health food, that's how you always ate. People that are, you can go to Kentucky Fried now and you can get the 20 chicken legs, and that's 10 chickens. Nobody on the farm could kill 10 chickens in a night. It didn't work like that. Okay. And I'm still trying to find out what part of the chicken you think the nuggets come from, because it doesn't. All right. That's mystery meat. If you ever wanted mystery meat, that's mystery meat. The chicken nuggets is everything that was left over from when they cut the other parts of the chicken and then they press it together and that becomes a chicken nugget. Okay. But the World Health Organization has even told people hot dogs, the bologna, all of the luncheon meats, those are things that are high in sodium nitrate.
These processed meats, as they call it.
Processed meats, those are recognized as being cancer causing. Okay, they're still legal.
And they're consumed by the boatload.
By the boatload. Again, cigarettes are still legal. The processed meats and all those things are still legal. So it's the individual has to have the motivation to make that change. And unfortunately, many people don't have the motivation until they get sick. Now, I hope they don't get so sick that they can't do anything else, but it would be so good, especially, this is why I spend so much time with young people. You start off with the young, you might be able to instill certain habits that they stick with. I don't put the old people aside, but the old head has has their mind made up, and they're going to do what they're going to do, unless things get so bad that they just decide, well, I have to make a change. But if you can get to the young kids, that's why I push the comic books, because that's a way of being able to relate more to the young people. Real quick here, my nickname is Donald Spiderman Thomas.
I know. That's what I put.
At the time of this interview, this is the 60th anniversary of the character of the Amazing Spider-Man. There are 899 issues of Amazing Spider-Man. I own 898. I need I need Spider-Man #1 to own every Spider-Man that there is.
Wait a minute. Repeat that again. How many issues of Amazing Spider-Man?
I want to say 800 and I have to look real quick, but I'm almost sure it's 889, 890, one or the other, somewhere around there.
And how many of those you got?
I have every one except #1. So I own,
you have over 800 Spider-Man.
Oh, and that's just if you go to the Black Arachnite, and you'll put it up on the screen there.
Yeah, let me put his banner up. Whoa, I should have been put your banner up. Sorry about that, Donald.
There you go. The Black Arachnite, that is my comic book store. I have an online comic book store, and in a minute I'll talk to you about a good brother, because I want to give him acknowledgement. But I have an online comic book store, and one of the things, those comic books were, a lot of people thought comic books are just for kids. Well, a lot of those comic books were written on a grade level of high school and even college, depending upon the character. You know, characters like Doctor Strange, Mr. Fantastic, the Beast, and the X-Men, they were known for using big words. Like most mothers, my mother encouraged me to read, but she didn't like me reading comic books. And she said, if you're going to read a comic book, you have to show me at least one new vocabulary word in that comic book. And so that's how I was able to get so many comic books, because I could always show her a word that was in that comic book. The point is that even years ago, Nelson Mandela was in a comic book, and some people were very insulted. And Mandela came back and said, no. He said, for many people, that comic book is a way to encourage them to read. And we want our people to read everything out there. And so if that comic book with me in there is a way to encourage the children and the adults to learn more, to get their language skills together, that's a good thing. So, so that comic book store that I have, Spider-Man is 60 years old. Black Panther is 56 years old. I own every Black Panther comic book.
And let me say this, Donald. I was at your house. I saw them.
You saw them.
I saw them. I bear witness.
And people go online.
And you're just talking about two of how many you got? About 20 different ones, and this, that, and other.
Yes, because see, Amazing Spider-Man, and then there were other issues that tied into Amazing Spider-Man. So I own it all, plain and simple. I need #1 and Amazing Fantasy 15 to own every Spider-Man comic book that there is. So that's part of how my nickname.
That is amazing. That's amazing.
But you see, here's something else, even going back to minority health and so on. You've seen TV shows with people with their collections. How many times you ever seen a Black person on one of those shows with a collection of anything? Rarely, if ever. Mm-hmm. A collection is something that takes a certain amount of discipline and time and energy.
And research.
And you never saw them say that Black people had collections just like white people have collections, but you never saw any Black person with a collection. The idea, that take a certain amount of discipline. Maybe we don't have that. Okay, you dig? I don't know. A lot of people don't realize many years ago in the National Football League, a Black player couldn't be quarterback because the attitude was that the Black quarterback would freeze when the going got tough. That was the attitude, you see? And so all of these things focus on mental discipline. The fact that I was able to do something and stay focused for 93 hours is something that there's a lot of places that don't want to promote that. You're a young Black man from Brownsville. Put it this way, as I say to people, had I robbed the bank and held people hostage for 93 hours, the world would know my name. Okay.
I don't mean to laugh, but we know that's true.
Listen, they don't make
no question.
As a young Black man, I did something intelligent, beneficial to society and to my community. They don't make movies about those type of young Black men. They make movies about menace to society. That's the sort of image that they want to promote. So I will always be proud to say I was raised on a dead-end street in Brownsville, and this is what I was able to accomplish. And I have to put it to you like this. If not for Rosa Thomas, I'd have prison records instead of world records.
And
It's
that's
my
your mother.
mother.
That's your
It's
mother.
my mother.
And I bear
That is
witness because she was with you in all 3 Guinness record events.
Well, not only that, but as I tell the story, the book that you held up, The Philosophy of Divine Nutrition, that cost $5,000 to have 4,500 copies printed. My mother paid for that book. And about a year after I moved to Hawaii, she came to Hawaii to visit me, and we were at a restaurant, and she said to me, she said, son, when you asked me for the money for that book, I spoke to some members in the family and some friends, and some of them told me not to do it. I'm so glad I didn't listen to them. And I looked at my mother and I said, Mom, $5,000. How many young men from my community, the parents had to spend more than that on bail, on legal fees, on drug rehab? And here I am, a young man doing something clean, intelligent, and anybody tell you don't support it. How sad.
But that's Donald, I ain't gonna keep you long. I done went way over time. We're gonna break another record, okay?
I warned you.
Yeah, you didn't have that long.
I warned you.
But you hold up. Please, everybody take note. My guest is Donald Spiderman. Hold up. I need to hear this again. When I was in your house, I was amazed at the volume and the number of comic books you had. You're saying you have every Black Panther issue?
Every Black Panther. Black Panther started in Fantastic Four 52 and 53, and then he had his own volumes. And so I own all of that. And I need Amazing Spider-Man #1 to own every Amazing Spider-Man. And for people that's into comics, of course, I need Amazing Fantasy 15 because that's the crown jewel. He was introduced in a comic book just as a second story, but he was so popular in that story, he got his own comic book, The Amazing Spider-Man. And one thing I want to say to you very quickly, brother, not only did I have a Spider-Man comic book collection, but I also had stock in Marvel comic books. In the 1990s, I had stock in the company. Marvel had a contract with Activision for the video games. I had stock in Activision. They had a contract with Hasbro toys for the superhero toys. I had stock in that toy company. Every year, I see young Black people line up around the corner for $200, $300, $400, $500 sneakers. I could never knock you for having your collection. But just like I had stock in the comic book collection, I want you to go and look and see about having stock in Nike. Get stock in Adidas. Get stock in Fila's. Everybody knows how to make money off of us. Nobody teaches us how to make money off the society. When Spider-Man did well, I did well. And we know Spider-Man does very well.
Damn well, okay? And listen, and we're not talking about how Marvel went into the movie business of it. The movie side of it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I was a stockholder during the time that Marvel was deciding whether or not they would go over to Disney. And as a Marvel stockholder, I had a vote on whether or not I felt they should go. And I voted in the affirmative because I always felt that the best presentation for comic books was animation. And who better than Disney for animation? Now, Into the Spider-Verse was produced by Sony, but the fact that it was animation was the point that I always felt that Marvel would do well if they got in with Disney. And they're doing bang up business.
I was going to say it went way beyond your imagination.
Way beyond.
Listen, Donald, there's a couple of things I gotta, because we done went way over. Hold on, it's all your fault too.
My fault. It's my fault.
Hold up. This is his latest book. Tell us about this book, Donald.
New Jump Swing, Healthy Aging and Athletic Nutrition Program. The first 2 books that you put up there, Philosophy of Divine Nutrition and The Way of PDN, the Ultimate Vegetarian Athletic Nutrition Program. This book is the revised and updated version of everything that was in those 2 books.
In other words, you go to 21st century.
Correct. So everything that was in those first 2 books that I used to break the records is in this book, revised and updated, because knowledge increases. If I took the attitude that in 1978, I knew enough that I didn't have to study nutrition any longer, that would be very foolish of me. And so I'm always revising and updating. Now, this book in soft cover right now, you can get on Amazon, However, within the next 3 or 4 weeks, you'll be able to download the 3rd edition of this book, which will be the most updated. And it will be an ebook or in PDF. And it will have everything. It will have the jump rope program. It will have the nutrition program. I have one whole page of cookbooks that you can buy, vegan and vegetarian cookbooks that you can buy. So the whole point is to really have one book that kind of serves as a primer. Once you read that one, I'm going to give you the information that you can go in any direction you want to go and get more information about it.
One more thing too, and you talked about this flower pollen. Can you explain that to us, please?
The foundation of my diet is flower pollen, and that is because my diet is a plant-based nutritional program. Flower pollen is the foundation of all plant-based foods. Flower pollen, for those who remember back in the day of the Dick Gregory diet, the company that was sponsoring the Dick Gregory diet was Cernitin America. Cernitin America produced a flower pollen. This flower pollen is from Graminex that took over after Cernitin, and it is a purer product. The flower pollen during the Dick Gregory days, the outside of the pollen is like a seed and it has a shell. They used a chemical process to break down the shell during the days of the Cernitin America. This particular pollen uses a microbial process to break down that outer shell, and so it is a purer and a cleaner product. It is excellent, and it has very good documentation. Flower pollen for the prevention and reduction of prostate problems in men, as well as overall energy for men and women.
That's amazing. And this is called flower pollen.
Flower pollen, or this particular product, Pollen Aid, that is the only product. If you want to associate me with a product, this is the product to associate me with.
Yeah, and I know you picky because you're a Virgo. I bear witness on that one.
And Mama was a Virgo, you know.
So listen, with this flower pollen, can people get that through your website? Let me show you.
They will be able to get through the New Jump Swing website. Actually, they can go through the Black Arachnight. They can go to either one. The store will have it. My store will have that particular product. And one of the things I always say to people, I'm not just selling you anything. Like I said, I preach the sermon and never pass the plate. I could sell you anything. You write to me. If you have any issues with it, if you want to know more about it, once you buy it, by all means, I have a contact page. You write to me and I will certainly get back to you. Because
since we've been knowing each other since the 70s, I think I can vouch for you. All righty? No question.
And you've been taking pollen how many years? Since you know me.
Since you told me.
All right.
Bee pollen, propolis, honey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Good. Donald, hold on one second. I need to kind of let people know what we're going to have for this coming Wednesday. But this is, please make sure you take note, write down his website. He is a private, and he is available for private consultations. So that means you could have a young person, but let's say a young person may have a relative or aunt or grandmother and stuff that kind of needs it. They can also contact you and advise. You can advise them or whatever, or give them suggestions. Because you are a doctor, okay?
So I not only consult in terms of nutrition, but also in terms of Social Security, how to win your Social Security case, what you'll need, as well as I also work with people on how to deal with workplace harassment. In my life, I've had lawsuits in the name of race, sex, and age discrimination on jobs, and I've won my case every time. And that is also a part of the consultation services that I provide.
Well, they should have looked at your background and all them Guinness records. They'd have left you alone, okay?
You would think, some people, they just insist on poking the bear, They don't learn. And
you're not the one, Donald.
You have to wonder. Don't poke the bear. But some people just, what we say, Wesley Snipes, people always got to try to skate uphill.
Yeah. That's interesting. I gotta see if I can get in touch with Wesley. That'd be nice to have him on the show because when he came to me, he asked about the different names of the companies that he wanted to set up, and one of them was Almond Ra, and I did that. And Almond Ra produced all the Blade series that people do.
That's right.
So I mean, so I've been very blessed with people like yourself.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's just interesting. Anyway,
Did you
sit
meet
tight, buddy.
Wesley? Did you meet Wesley when he was with me?
Huh?
Did you meet Wesley when he was with me?
Yes.
Yeah, that's when you met him. Okay.
And
Yeah.
that's how he came to me and became my client.
Okay. All right.
And then he would
All
call me
right.
and say, brother, we about due.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
So
Very
it's,
good.
yeah, the
Glad
small
to hear
world,
it.
Donald. Small
Glad
world.
to hear it. Very
Okay.
glad.
Sit tight 1 second, buddy. Don't go nowhere. All right, everybody. I wanna let you know that on this Wednesday, first of all, I gotta tell you this. Right here, today, um, and tomorrow only. My online course is on sale. It's a bestseller. Learn from Lloyd how to read a person like a book. Okay. The sale ends tomorrow. If you notice, they're giving the price lower and lower. So you have no excuse not to get both of them for the price of lunch for two. Almost the price of lunch for one nowadays, the way things are going up with
About
inflation.
it.
But in the meantime, though, this is the course. It is now in 70 countries. Over 3,100 students have signed up and taken the course. You will get a certification that you completed the course. It's translated into 25 languages. So it's not me as so much as the universality of numerology and what it does and can do, as you've seen demonstrated by my guests. On Wednesday, this Wednesday, I'm going to have this distinguished young lady, Miss Monica Bay. She is an astrologer extraordinaire. This woman is incredible. I got her as a result of hearing the word come out of my man Dominic Holmes' mouth. Okay, and I figured that if he talked to him, and good as he is, then I want to go to the source, and this is one of them. So on Wednesday, I'm going to have this distinguished young lady on to join us. So with that said, okay, with that said, hold on, Donald. Hold, I'll get this in a second. Donald. we could talk for a long time.
Hey, we said it was going to be live. We said it
Yeah,
was going to be
yeah,
live.
yeah.
So.
But what an amazing achievement. I mean, talk about live by examples. If people don't give a point of what you do, that's great. I am overdue to come back to Hawaii. When I saw it was in the middle of the ocean, man, I got real scared because I said if the ocean just burps, Hawaii's a wrap. Okay, so
Well,
but anyway,
I live on the Big Island up in the hills, so even if the waters come up, they won't come up that
that's where
high.
I went to Hilo. It was
Right,
just
right.
beautiful, 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 wonderful, wonderful experience. And I thank you very, very much. And I bear witness that I saw all of his collections and I was literally stunned. And the fact that you have every single one of Black Panther and only the one out of 800 and some issues of
Spider-Man.
Amazing Spider-Man, forgive me if I'm not impressed. And everybody should be impressed. And everybody, if they're doing that, should take a page from you too, which is wherever you're going to invest in the stock of it too.
There you go. That's what it. I want to. Please remember that. Remember that if you spending $300 on the sneakers, look into buying stock into that company. Whatever your collection, if they've got stock, you make some money off of them.
Donald, that makes so much sense. That makes a lot of sense.
We've been conditioned to be consumers and not producers.
And brother, that's why I said we starve in the midst of plenty. And my attitude is ignorance in our community is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that's the main reason for my speaking records. My people perish for lack of knowledge. Just what it comes down to.
Well, Donald, God bless you, man. Keep up the good work. And I'm going to just sit tight 1 second. I'm going to do the sign off. Everybody, thank you very, very much. No, I didn't answer any phone calls because I wanted to bring something relevant. And by the way, pick up this book, page 308, 309, where I talk about him, his birthday, how he started and whatnot. So, I mean, it's just an amazing thing. And I'm honored that he was a man that was blessed to come and see me. And we did each other proud. That's all I can say. God bless you, Donald. All righty.
Thank you, brother.
Take care. Everybody,
aloha.
have a blessed day. Aloha, aloha. And I'll see you on Wednesday with my very extraordinary guest, Miss Monica Bay.